do it.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Besties and Books with Kristy Mickelsen and Kat Satava. We usually do this on Twitter Spaces, but we wanted to come out and try something new and try it for our YouTube channels. So, I'm Kristy Mickelsen and Kat Satava. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm really excited to be doing this in a whole new media. Like, this is something I'm nervous about. So, I'm super excited to get to share this experience for the first time with you. So, thank you for being there for
Awesome.
me, bestie.
No problem, my bestie. So, for people that are not familiar with me, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little intro. My name is Kristy Mickelsen. I am a romance book author and an advocate for causes such as cancer, autism, and lupus awareness. You can find my books on Amazon.com and other online retailers, and you can follow me on most social media platforms, including Twitter.com at Kristy Books. Kat, where can people find you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I am author Kat Satava. I worked really hard for that. So I am an epic fantasy writer as well as a supernatural fiction author. And my books can be found on Amazon and any of your other online book retailers. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Facebook and on Twitter as well.
Awesome. So tonight, usually what we do is we talk about different topics in the author world when we're on Twitter Spaces. Tonight, we're going to go ahead and talk about something a lot of people have been asking us about, and that is why is it important for an author to get out into the community, get their name out there, do some book signings and book festivals. So those things are very key in our life, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about what I do when I go out in the community and why I do book signings. And then Kat is going to talk to you about book festivals and things she does when she goes out in the communities. So let's get started, everybody. So, one of the reasons why I think it's very important to go out into the community is it depends on your why. Why do you want to be an author? Why are you writing? What is your purpose? So
So
for
I can live
me,
my life in the pages of books instead of having to go out in the real world.
I
Right?
feel
That's
you.
that's what all of us authors are thinking, right? Like, because most of us are really avid readers too, right? So, like, we think our lives are going to be just like us tucked into our little cute office where we're typing, we're watching the world through the window. That's
Never happens that
I
way.
know, right? Never, never. Watching you do your magic out in the community, like people just don't even know. You have to share. You have to tell them how you do this because I was in awe. Like literally the first time I watched you, just like
Oh.
some random person just being like, "Hey, what's up? You want to look at a book?" I was like,
I mean, it's
"What's
not quite like
happening
that.
right now?" No, it wasn't like that. But you came off as like just so not cavalier, but so confident. And I know you personally have told me like you were faking it until you made it, but at the same time, you could not tell. Like literally people my jaw dropped. It was on the floor going, I'm in the presence of greatness right now. I better be I almost whipped out my phone to take notes to see like, okay, how does she do that? Like
She's
so
making me
you're
sound
gonna tell
better than
me
what it is, let
no,
me
no,
tell you.
I'm not, you guys. So I'm gonna let her tell you what she does and how she does it because it's a master class and just randomly promoting yourself in your community, right? I think
Absolutely. And
I think you do a excellent job of just reaching out and making connections with, you know, people that may not be our ideal audience, but might know somebody who is, or, you know, you just never know. And we judge people a lot. And you didn't. You're like, guy at the convenience store, do you like to read romance or got a girlfriend that reads romance? I think that's how that went. And we were just like the Dollar General, like it was fantastic. I loved it.
well, ladies and gentlemen, she's way too kind. It is not that great, let me tell you. But I find when I go out in the community, I do some of those things. What I do is I take a purse with me that has a couple books in it, some index cards, some ink pens. And if we're at the local gas station or the local Dollar General, like Kat is talking about, if I'm talking to the cashier, I'll just kindly say, "Hey, do you have a girlfriend or do you have anybody that reads romance books?" And if they say yes, then I like to say, "How would you like a free book?" And if they say they want that free book, then I ask them, "Okay, would you mind exchanging your email address for this free book in order to get people onto my newsletter campaign?"
All right.
That's one of the ways that I get out into the communities. Anywhere I go, I'm going to bring up that I'm an author because my why is I really want to give my kids something to be proud of their mom for. I really want them to, when they get older, be like, wow, mom did not give up on her dreams.
Right.
Mom made it to the top. Mom is going to do this. So if she can do it, I can
I
do
can
it.
do it too. Right.
So, what I personally believe is if you want to reach that goal, you've got to work for it. There is no getting out of it. Like, it doesn't happen like Kat was talking about. You don't just sit behind your computer and look out the window and everything's
God,
romanticized. It's not
remember the
like
good old
that,
days? Like,
right? It's just not like that anymore. So, going out into the community is very, very, very important if you want to achieve your goal of being a worldwide known author.
right.
You want to go out there and talk to people. You want to get out there and tell people that you're an author. You want to get people onto your email list. So, one of the things I love to do is I do book signings. Now, book signings aren't always wonderful for sales. Sometimes you'll
Right.
get one person.
If you're
Sometimes
lucky.
you'll,
If you're lucky.
yeah, if you're lucky.
Because a lot of
Sometimes you'll
times
get,
people have already bought your book and are bringing it to you so they can sign so you can sign it, you know? So like I find what you're saying is absolutely true. I think the book signing aspect of it is more about treat it now now that I've done a couple like me and you did that one together at the
right,
um whiskey river, right? Was that
correct.
mm, um and like our sale was to some guy who's like, "Oh, my girlfriend's gonna love this." He bought like one of all of our books, which was surprising because me and Christy we read or we write very different genres,
Genres.
um, but I find that people really like free. Free is good. So, like, I take the opportunity. I don't know, maybe you do this as well, Christy, at your book signings, but I try to tell them what's coming up. Like
Absolutely.
maybe read them like a little excerpt of the upcoming stuff, not just the stuff that they already have. You know, I I love to have an opportunity and time to like answer questions about my book, um, and other aspects of my author life, which has been developing over the last couple of years. And when Chrissy has dragged me out of my author closet, kicking and screaming, going, "No, no!" Right? Because it is hard to get into the community and promote yourself if you're not used to doing that on like a regular basis. If it comes up in conversation, it's usually great. But for me, it's really hard to go out there and be like, what part of me do I want to share with you that you didn't get from my what I write? And because I'm a baby author, and I like to say that because at 40, I finally buckled down, and on my 44th birthday I published for the first time, and it was amazing and fantastic. And but being out there and being like, you still have that imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know, maybe when I have 3 books under my belt, maybe I'll change my mind about that. But you know uh
No, girl, you're an author the minute you start, so
I know.
congratulations, I tip my hat to you on that. It's
Thank
it's
you,
harder than
thank you.
people think,
It
so
is,
it
right?
is. It is so
Even
hard.
what is put out there as being so easy, like I've gone to lots of different, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later. I've gone to lots of different festivals and met a lot of the authors that I love to read. And you just look at them and you're like, "Oh, they have to have some magic idea," like when I first started going to festivals, that was, and I listened to panels and stuff like that. And that would be the first thing I would ask, like, "What's the magic?" And they're like, you just take those voices that are talking to you in your head, and you sit your butt in a chair, and you do
You're
some
right.
writing, and then you share that with a group of trusted friends so that you get that feedback. And you, even if it's, people that write differently than you do, I think that's the difference now, so much so that your community and your platform are almost as important as a story you're going to tell, if not more
Absolutely.
so, right? Because you can have a great story and you can write it all up and hand it out to your friends and family when you want to. But if you're wanting to be in more than just a storyteller, if you're wanting to have that author life and have your words valued, you have to put just as much value into the handoff of that, right? Like, so you taught me that that's so important, that you are able to say, hey, you know what? I did this. It's freaking amazing. And you need to read it too. Like, that hands down was probably like the best advice ever. Like, just cat, it's a good story. Like, you're saying the same thing to me. Like, why don't you hear yourself? Like, imposter syndrome is real though. Like, and it really can throw a wrench in those live conversations, those, because you get nervous. Like, I don't know, maybe you don't after a while. Maybe that's the whole author purse version. Like, if you're always prepared, then you're always prepared. And I have not always been prepared. So, you
Well,
know,
girl, you better get out of that
I
state of
know, I
mind.
know. I gotta get a bag made that's got my name all over it and says I'm an author, so that when I carry it with me, people are like, "You're an author?" I'm like, "Why? Yes, I am."
So you you crack me up, girl.
That's why we're
But
besties. That's why we're besties. I'm fun this way, and you get me out of my shell in other ways. Like, I when I see us, I still think of us as, those 14-year-old girls with hairbrushes and Guns N'
singing in the
Roses
living room,
blaring.
right?
Yeah, especially in your living room, because your living room, remember, you had those floor lamps that we could move around and make it look like lighting? Yeah. Oh, we were those
Yes.
people, guys. We were every 80s kid you can think of and imagine that
We
was
were
still
them.
holding on to the 80s from the 90s, because by then we were in the 90s, right? Yeah, that was us. You can picture Stranger Things, that's us. That's us. Not calling demons, but you know what I mean.
So back to the book signing thing so that we could keep on topic a little bit, everybody. Uh, it's important to go out and email or phone, contact by phone, different places that you might want to hold a book signing. And if they agree, then you need to go in there, act confident, be confident, look good. Because when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you make more sales. Trust me on that, ladies and gentlemen. Getting out into the community is so important. Do you agree to that, Kat?
Absolutely. Like, um and it that too can be harder than it looks, especially if you're thinking about, like, these, you're going to go out and sell 1 million books at your book signing because everybody wants it, right? That that dream is there, and one day it will happen when you're, through perseverance. Nobody comes out of the dark, and it's like, everybody wants to read my book now. You have like you have to you have to work on it and get that buzz going, and that starts at home. I like to think of it now as like concentric circles of getting my name out there, right? So, like, last year we did the book signing at Whiskey River. Then I also did a book signing at a local bookstore in Phoenix. Um, Two very different experiences. Um, then I had, like, not a necessarily epiphany about it, but kind of, like, where I intended to be at a festival and trying to work the festival versus just going to it. Um, so I always recommend, like, what Christy's saying, you're going to take time to go out there and get to know the people closest to you first, and then you're going to have friends and family that live clear across the country. And it's just that ripple effect. It's like skipping stones. So, um, my plan for this year is to make sure that I do like 3 more book signings, but I'm also going to be contacting our local like chamber of commerce and seeing when things are going around, because lots of places have first Fridays here in Arizona. So, and the weather's about to get warm, and people like to go out and have a good time, and walks amongst food trucks and stuff like that. So, like, trying not always thinking you don't always have to have a book signing at like a bookstore, or you know um you and I have talked about this a lot. We've brainstormed like tons of different places that you can do book signings, and just taking it on that breadth of, this is promotional work and this is marketing work, not necessarily sales work.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't have a problem giving a book away at half price and with my signature and whatnot. I just ask, hey, because we're in person, can you maybe, I don't know, um, throw a review up there when you're done reading it, you know? And the importance of having a street team helps a lot. Like, I have one of my most avid supporters used to um, put my books out at like her local doctor's office. Every time she go to her doctor's office, she'd leave
Hey,
one of my
that's
books in the
perfect.
lobby, right? And you can do that too. Like, when you go to your dentist appointment, like, take your book with you. Offer to sign it. Give one to the receptionist. They always like to read stuff. Um, and potentially doing like random places that you wouldn't necessarily think of. But like, my neighborhood has a list of local business owners, like, because there's lots of entrepreneurs in my neighborhood. Um, check it, leave it at church. Offer to come come and do something with the church in collaboration. Like, so, once you start really thinking about it, you can potentially like have a book signing every month if you wanted. And especially within your local neighborhood. Now, surprisingly enough, Christy, I don't know if you have this problem there in Texas, but here, um, the libraries are really hard to get into to do book signings. Like, there's a huge like referral process in order to do that here. Do you have that issue with your local library there?
Well, here in Texas, you see where I'm at in Texas. I'm in a smaller town. We're in kind of a
Hmm.
countryish area. Our libraries aren't quite as hard. Now, the actual city of where I live here in Texas,
Hmm.
yes, you do have a program you have to go through and some paperwork and all that. But in the smaller towns, like where my mother would live, she lives in a very small town with a population of maybe 400. I mean,
Right.
those cities, you should just go in and tell them who you are, give them a copy of the book, and they're more than willing to let you do whatever you need to do. They're very willing to get out there and support you in anything you need to do. So I think you need to think outside the box a little bit when you're trying for those libraries. Not only the big cities, but go into these really small towns, these little,
Yeah.
like really small towns. They're always willing to help out local indie authors.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really
Absolutely.
big thing. One of the things that I love doing is when I went into town one day with my daughter, we went to go get a haircut. And I got a haircut. And with my tip, I tipped my hairdresser her tip and I gave her a book. And that sparked a whole thing throughout the store. All of a
Right.
sudden, everybody wanted autographs. Everybody wanted a business card. Do you have more books? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, just one person giving a book out to one person sparked
Yep.
10 ladies. I could not leave that store without giving out 10 autographs to these ladies and 10 business cards and 10 yeses, I can get you books, blah, blah, blah. Think
Right.
about where you're at. If you're in an area that with people that might enjoy your book, don't be
Right.
afraid to give out one of those books. That is so important. And I'm glad you brought up the library cat.
Yeah. Like, I found that I was almost discouraged by my local library, which was shocking to me. Like, because you would think that that would be the place where, that they would want to support you. Now, you could rent out the space and hold your own bit like that, but if you're wanting the library to endorse you being there, then it's a whole should be it's a bit much. But I think that, like you said, I had a similar experience with that in making I was coming back from a festival and happened to have books with me. Met one of my um, friends and fans, and I knew that she had wanted me to sign her book, and she was going to buy some for her family. And so while we were at the restaurant having dinner, she told our waiter, she's like, having dinner with a really famous author. And he like freaked out. He's like, "Are you serious? Like you're an author? That's awesome." And he immediately like followed me on all the social media platforms, and I gave him a book as part of our tip, and he was like so stoked. He went back in the back, and I heard him like bragging to all his the other wait staff. I was like, well, that just makes your day, on top of it's well worth the whatever money you're losing out if you're doing it to truly promote yourself and get yourself out there. And really, I don't know, I love giving my books though. I mean, I think
That's
that's
not good,
awful for
girl.
right? Like,
3 a month. 3 a month, everybody. Don't just give away.
uh-huh.
3 a
Look,
month.
okay, I like parameters, thank you for that, because
Yes, 3 a
you
month.
know, granted, I'm better about it than I used to be, like, at first it was, like, kinda like anybody who I knew, a lot of my friends um wouldn't let me give them books. They would, go and buy and then buy for their friends and stuff like that. So, um, but I find like it's great to raffle them off at book signings, which also helps build your author newsletter. But let's see, what other things do you do in the community, Chrissy? I know, like, I've seen you give T-shirts to people so that they could, you can take a Facebook selfie with them and post it on your stuff. Um,
I do a
those little
lot,
things,
actually. Yeah.
yeah, you do a lot out in your community. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? Because festivals take like 5 seconds to talk about.
Sure. Another thing that I'm doing, I've hit a spot in my career where it's better to get out and do some charity work. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm holding a Christmas party for the senior citizens of Amarillo at the local nursing home. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're gathering up presents for every resident that's there. We're going to go in and decorate the nursing home. We have people donating trees and decorations, and
Oh, that's amazing.
uh, we have my mom who loves to knit. She's knitting knit hats for all of the patients there. We have a big thing going this year for Christmas. So that's one of the ways we're going to do. And we're also getting uh, word out into the community about it by asking for donations. But also, when I do book signings, I let them know about what we're doing, and they're offering up free used books to help give out to those senior citizens. So that's
Yeah,
getting our name out there. Also, one of the things that's helping is coming on to podcast. You want to get on to podcast to get your
yeah,
name out there, even if it's your local uh, store or something that's doing a
right,
podcast. Do it. You want to get your name out there as many times as possible. But out in the community itself, go out and do something that's going to get your name promoted. I've had
right.
Amarillo Global News checking out this fact that I'm doing a Christmas party. I've had different spot radio stations, like everybody's willing to help you if you just promote them back. It's all about
Right,
cross promotion. So get out there, talk to your local news stations, talk to your local libraries, talk to your local bookstores. You just need to get out there and talk to
right,
people. Go out and start emailing some of your magazines, and you'll be surprised at some of the things that come up for you. I
right.
had uh, little interview slash story into KC Voyage magazine, which is just an indie little magazine out in Missouri.
Hmm.
But they've got it out there. It's you can find it online. You can find it out. Just go out there. You'll be surprised
Yeah,
at what you can do.
I would say like also you could maybe talk to your local HOAs and stuff, because they're constantly doing things in their communities. So like I really love the idea of partnering You know the word I'm
Partnering?
trying to say. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With
Hey, it happens to all of us.
there's just certain words that just will not come out of my mouth correctly. So, um, but partnering with your think about what you're doing in your stories in your books. Like, you know, Chrissy, you are talking about doing this, the hosting the Christmas party for the senior citizen home. And your latest book, Christmas to Remember, isn't like senior citizen, but it is,
For the
an
older
a
community, yeah.
mature woman crowd, like it's your lavender hats, not quite get your red hats. But I think that that's an amazing thing that you could give all of them a copy
A
of your book,
copy.
and be like, here's my Christmas present to you guys. And you're giving them hope and something that's written specifically for them, like it's not out of the realm of why you would do that. Right. And so
Absolutely.
I think that that's a really important piece too. Like, because you do write romance, and so far it's been kind of innocent romance,
So far.
so far,
Don't
so
worry,
far.
ladies
Hint,
and
hint,
gentlemen, it's not
hint.
so innocent coming up.
Right. I'm not having a seizure. That's me, giving you that the hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod of what we can come to um
Expect
be
at the end of the
be
year.
expecting at the end of the year, right? But even with that, like, you can partner with your local, like, massage therapy places. You can to do maybe, a raffle for a couples giveaway. Those romantic pieces are so important. You can go to your local florists, or I know in, for instance, your second book, Lady for Hire, she talks a lot about the restaurant business, give away, like some nice dinner stuff, or partner, like you said, with like with a local eatery, if you will, of like,
Local steakhouse, ladies and gentlemen.
right, right, right. Say like, hey, do you mind if I have a book signing in here tonight? And we'll maybe put together a special meal and call it, the Redlands for two. Like there's so many things that if we sit back and think about that aren't just book about the books, but what we're featuring in our stories and what we're highlighting in our stories. Because I know, Chrissy, you're a big advocate, both in your real life and in your stories. Like each one of your stories has some aspect of your real life and your lived experience, um, that you're willing to share with your characters, to help go through that, right, in those moments. So I've lost my train of thought just this second. I know I was
I
headed somewhere with it. You
it's
you know
okay.
you're my bestie. You know what I was trying to say. Bring it home for them.
Basically, what she is saying is that whatever you're putting into your story, even if it's coming from your own life, you want to go out there and promote that too. So by
Yeah.
doing a Christmas to Remember, my book, A Christmas to Remember for the senior citizen, she hit it on the head. One of the gifts that we are giving them that I was kind of keeping in the bag,
Sorry.
that's
Oh,
okay. It's okay.
I
Is
get cold.
they're all getting a copy of A Christmas to Remember signed, and their presents will be handed out by my personal Santa Claus if I can get him to
Nice,
agree.
nice.
So, yeah, think about what's in your story. Think about what's in your community that can help you promote your story. Also, it doesn't always have to be about your story. You
Right.
want to sell yourself. Now, that sounds pretty kinky, ladies and gentlemen.
Sure does.
However,
That's her realm.
However, you want to go out there and talk about you. So, what are things that you're interested in? Kat, I know, is very interested in fantasy. She loves fantasy. She loves
Sure do.
witches and warlocks and magic and things like
Vampires and
that.
magic and all that good
Yeah. And
stuff.
here in Texas, they have the Fan Expo out in Dallas every year, which
Mm,
really is based on fantasy.
so wanna
You
go.
could go out and do Comic Con, you could go out and do fan expos. You can do so many things
Right.
out in your community. And why is this important, Kat? Why is it important for us to get out in the community? Bring it home, girl. Tell them.
Well, because when you're at that festival, you wanna be on that panel next. You wanna be talking about what's important about your stories and how do they connect to your audience. If you don't ever connect to your audience through what you're putting in your books, it doesn't matter how cute your cover is. It doesn't matter how much research you did into a topic. If you're not passionate about what you're writing about, nobody wants to hear about it.
That's right.
And because that's the way us authors connect with our communities first and foremost, right? Like, this is what we're doing. We're putting our stories in there. But what moves us in those stories. For instance, I write fantasy. I write epic fantasy. It's a lot. It's long. i- It's typically series, and the fantasy community has a hard time trusting that series will be completed, and they get burned a lot. So oftentimes they don't purchase books until a series is completed, or this is a proven author that they've seen many completed
Many
series
times.
from, right? So the way you get out there and get them all hopping to you is, like, think of all the different elements in a fantasy novel. Well, mine tends to be like, in the Lord of the Rings crowd, we're talking about, a whole new mythical place. And I do have really strong female characters, so like I can hit up women's locations that really highlight, women's strength and building and empowerment. And so we have a lot of those out here in our area. Not as many as I wish we did, but we do. Um, it has elements of witchcraft in my books, not um, more like wizardry type of witchcraft versus like the other kind.
Right, right.
More like
So
not
in
not so much like folk witch, but like high powered witch, type of deal. Secret
Now let me
society.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
Since you're a fantasy author, would, like, magic stores and stuff like that be good for you?
Right, right.
Okay.
So, stores that potentially are alternative bookstores, or do sell like herbs and Renaissance gear. Going to my local um, Renaissance reenactment groups, there, or sword playing places, and we recently got a medieval times here, so maybe
Hey,
leaving my book in the lobby, never mind.
there
I
you
left it
go.
in the bathroom. Take it. You can have it.
You can have it. Here's a business
Right?
card to go with it. I mean,
Right? Sorry, I left that there by accident. So I hope somebody
darn.
enjoyed it. Darn. Just kidding. Sort of. Um, but
But what people don't realize is even though we are authors, we still have to think outside the box and do
yeah,
these things
absolutely.
because
And just
without
really connecting.
promotion, yeah, it's connecting people. Without promotion, you're not getting your name out there. If you're
Right.
not getting your name out there,
Nobody
what's the
knows to
point of
read.
writing
Right.
stories? Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to read your story if they don't know who you are. It
Too, if
to
they can't
some
find it.
level, right? If they can't
Yeah.
find it, they can't see how you're wanting to connect with your audience. For instance, my book also um, has some elements of the LGBTQ community, so I always am really tight with them, and I'm like, hey, take my book out, give it away to people, you know. So but that's something that I'm really passionate about. So on top of that, like, I can make those connections in the community and be like, hey, we're having Pride Week this week. I want to be there. How do I, sign up to do a book signing or have a booth, or even just go and pass out my books amongst the crowd type of deal. There's so many different levels. Like, I know it just seems scary and overwhelming at first. I highly recommend, though, going to festivals. Um, I'm an avid goer of Tucson Festival of Books. I go almost every single year. Um, I stayed in a really sketch hotel, so I'm gonna make sure in the future that I make it a better priority so that it can be a funner trip. Maybe I can get my friend there, my bestie there, to come out and maybe
Hey,
visit and go.
we'll
Um,
see.
yeah. Well, they just started opening it up to having indie authors sitting on the panel, which is huge. They
That's
have
very huge.
never had that. So this last year, they had quite a few authors that I love and follow, and getting to meet them in person, every single one of them, I was like, hey, you know what? You've inspired my writing. This is what I've used your writing for. And they were all like, hey, give us your card. Let us know where can we find your book. You know, Becoming fans of theirs means they become fans of yours. Like everybody wants to hear how they inspired or motivated you to
Exactly.
become an author, right? Like that's the best compliment in the world. Um, sorry guys, I have like horrible allergies right now.
You're
All of our
fine, you're fine.
summer plants are in bloom. But yeah, like I gained so I'm kind of a research nut when it comes to my writing. So the work I'm currently working on is a supernatural thriller, and it's a serial. And I did so much research on some different aspects of this upcoming book, like cults and stuff like that. so it I read like 4 of Jeff Gunn's books, and I got to meet him. I didn't even know he was gonna be at Tucson Festival of Books, so I felt awful because I had none of his books with me, and I had already exceeded my book allowance by a lot. But I happened to see him sitting next to another author that I had watched a panel for, and I stood in line even though I didn't have a book for him to sign. I said, Look, I don't have a book for you to sign, but I just wanted to let you know that your book on Jim Jones and your book on Manson and your book on Bonnie and Clyde, like, dude, I wouldn't have been able to write the story I'm writing right now if it wasn't for you." And he was like, "Oh my God, thank you. That's like the best compliment I've ever gotten." He goes, "Tell me where your books are at. Where can I find your books? Do you have a card?" Like, and to have somebody that you read and you researched and you was inspiring to your writing, let me tell you, just takes the cake. So, and it helps, I think, reinvigorate this job that's very difficult, right? We doubt ourselves 24/7. We doubt whether or not anybody is going to want to read our story that's not related to us, you know, or owes us money. You know, I was pretty sure once I sold my first 100, I was like, "Okay, that takes care of my friends and family. Now all other books are people I don't know." Right? That was where I was going for. Uh, so meeting your heroes, like, I know people say you should never meet your heroes. That's such crap. You should totally meet your heroes, man. And because especially in the author community, even the ones that are pretty famous, like I met Charlene Harris, who I absolutely adore her Sookie Stackhouse series, and I'm super excited to start reading her newest series. Um, she's the sweetest Southern lady you will ever meet. She's just awesome, and to get that camaraderie, like, hey, this person does what I do. Maybe one
Then
day I'm going to be, sitting on a panel with Charlene Harris, like, holy smokes, it's like it's just a trippy feeling, I think, when you're an author to go to festivals and stuff like that because you're going for a different reason. You're going to scope stuff out, you're going to see, panels where the people that you were inspired by could maybe share their wisdom with you. Um, I also like the cons going to um this actually for the next 5 weeks, next week, starting next week. Um, there a contact I made at Tucson's Festival of Books reached out to me and said they hold this con it's called Confusion.
Oh, okay.
So it is 5 Saturdays, 5 different Phoenix libraries, and um 5 different like kind of topics. So like the first one we're going to is adventure and fantasy, where they have some panels. They're also featuring some activities for the community to do. It's a great way to market and get connection, right? Like
Awesome.
we cannot talk about connection enough. Like face to face connection is great. Online connection is great. I know Christy's introduced me to so many people in the Twitter world and Twitter Spaces world and podcasting and all of like it
It's a
doesn't
huge realm. Yeah.
it is, and we falsely put out there that being an author is so solitary, and it doesn't have to be. You can I have a beta reading group. I run a therapeutic writing group every Saturday that I'm getting ready to open up to doing subscriptions for. So, like, you can get to know people in your community and fellow authors who tend to be really good readers and promoters of other people's stuff.
Absolutely.
So meeting people in public who are doing what you're doing is not a waste. It's not competition because there's hundreds of them out there. Like, if I were to like Google how many romance novels are published every day, like,
Lots.
I
Lots.
mean, I can't even begin to imagine how many, right? The self-publishing world has become both super easy and super hard all at the same time.
Absolutely.
So I think
Absolutely.
those in-person things are really, really essential, like, to help remind you, like, you're an author, you wrote this, you have a great story to tell, you have a message in what you're telling. Like, people don't just go through all the emotionalness of creating a story. It's like having a baby. I don't know, Chrissy, you maybe uh, would feel differently, but I know when I held my first proof copy of my first book, like, I wept like I had just had a child, one that would never let me down. No, just kidding. Yeah, one that was perfect in every way. Um, like, it's like having a kid. Like, you thought of this idea, you got that glimmer in your eye, that we compared this the other day, me and you, right?
Right.
The, about how writing a book is like going through the 3 trimesters, and then you get to the end and you realize there's a 4th month, you know, an extra month in there that they don't tell you about, and then you get this perfect, wonderful, beautiful thing, and you're terrified that people are gonna tell you it's ugly, and but you also know that it's not, and the best thing I find, like, reviews don't, like, hit it for me. But those
Mm-mm.
in-person reviews, when somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh my god, I couldn't put your book down. Will you please sign it for me?" Or, "I I can't wait for the next one." Like, I gave a copy to a cashier once at a store, and, like, she was like, "I thought you were coming out with your next one soon." But, like, she goes, "I finished it already, like, we're all taking turns reading it in the back. When's the next one coming out?" And you're like, "I don't know." You like
But
4
that
years from now, but she asks me every time, right? And she makes sure, like, she hollers for me across the line, so, like, other people standing in line are like, "Oh, you're an author? That's cool." I'm like,
exactly.
"Here's my card, here's you know, go to my website, it's super easy, this is what it is. Or just ask her, she'll give you a review, right? And are all reviews gonna be great? No.
No,
Like, but let me tell you, nobody goes to a book signing to tell you how crappy your book is. So,
absolutely.
like, you never worry about those people. That's the nice thing about book signings.
That's a wonderful thing about book signings. But I do want to kind of mention we've been talking a lot about book signings and book festivals. Don't just limit yourself to signings and festivals.
Right.
Like we said, get out into the community. Here's something that I've learned through all the crap that I've dealt with trying to get into this world, everything, and that is you need to get your face and your name seen in as many places as possible out in the community, online, in store, like everywhere. The more people see your face and the more people hear your name, they're going to be like, oh, that's stuck in my head. She has some books out. Let me check her out. Everything. Or if they personally don't read or don't like your genre, but they know someone else that does, they're going to pass your name. I have gotten so many book sales just from people saying, I remembered your name. Lucy down the street mentioned your name, and now I
Right.
read your book, and that touched my heart. So it's word of mouth. A lot of
Absolutely.
people do not realize that you don't have to be stuck in this little box.
Right.
Get out of that box and do what. set your heart on fire. Like I love, like Kat mentioned earlier, I love having a couple t-shirts printed out, hand them out to a couple cashiers and say, you know what, let me take a picture with you to put on my website. And my t-shirts usually say like Kristy Mickelsen Books, #1 fan, or something that has
Mhm.
my name. All of a sudden, it's on the website. All of a sudden, people are like, I want one of those. All right,
Right,
you buy a book, I'll make sure you get a shirt or
right,
something. Make sure you're promoting yourself out into the community. It is so important, especially if your why is to become a world known author.
right,
If you're just doing this as a hobby, then you don't really need to worry about everything Kat and I are talking about
right,
tonight. If you're
right.
doing it as a hobby, don't worry about any of this. But if you're trying to make it into the professional world of writing, get yourself out there. Kat, would you agree? Because we're going to be coming up close to our closing time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. Like I I would even go as far as to say like do invite people that you know to come and do like a just a book reading in a public place. Like people want to know what you guys are doing, you know. I am working with a group of people to um go and do that kind of like on a uh quaint like coffee shops, like non-Starbucks coffee shops. Like, you know, like the ones where um people go to sit and write and read, you know, and those kinds of things. So getting together with a bunch of my friends and just being like, "Hey, I'm going to read like the first chapter of my book," or, you know, "Do you want to come?" And we'll like almost as if we're having a book club, but it's my book, you know, and getting
Absolutely.
people excited like that because you never know. Like I try to assume what, you know, as an assuming I know I shouldn't do it, right? Because that's just making an ass of myself. But you can never just people are not like books. I'm a book cover judger. And I know you're not supposed to, but I do.
People do. Yeah.
If you have a good cover, dude, I'm in. I'm all in. Like I don't even have to read the back. I don't want to read the blurb. Just give me if you have a good cover, I want to read it. You know? So do that. Get your cover out there. Get yourself out there. There's book clubs that are constantly looking for special speakers. Like, you know, like maybe go to your local romance book club, you know. People think, "Oh, I need a writers club." Like, no. You
No.
need a readers club. You need to actively read yourself, you know, like I I'm a firm believer in that, so I participate in a lot of book clubs. You know, so that way when people are like, "Hey, have you read any fantasy lately?" Yeah, I also write fantasy, so if you're ever interested and you want to read my book and review it, you know, just let me know and I'll get you a signed copy. People love that crap. You
They
know,
do.
everybody likes something for free, dude. I'm telling you. And you know, or like one time, me and Chrissy, we were talking, and I was like, "You should go to a boudoir photographer, team up with them, you know, to make an event for your ladies out there. You have an older crowd of ladies for your last book. Talk to a boudoir photographer, like about setting up a shoot for mature women, you know, type of thing. That keeps them feeling romantic and sexy, and you know." Plays into that, and when they are like, "Why are you here?" Is you're like, "Because I'm here. I'm the author. I'm promoting this. This is my friend. She's promoting making women empowered and romantic and sexy and all of that fun stuff, you know?" Like, there's so many different events you can now do that aren't necessarily just about your book, but are, right? Because I I'm sure that that's super tied into your story. Like, I've read your books. I know I would have great events for all of your books. I would call them like booking events, book events. You know, like find out from your local farmers market. Can you host you know, something or your local HOA office if you have an HOA like I do, because you know, some of us aren't as lucky as Christy to not have an HOA.
Or even get out to your local swap
Rec,
meets and things like that. I mean,
swap
there's so
meets,
much you can
rec
do.
centers, like you know what? Rec centers are always looking for activities and events, shelters and other programs. Like, I also work in the mental health field, so I'm very passionate about that. So go to some local events, do the things, let people know what you're impassioned by, because the more you are able to promote the things that drive you to write your stories and to communicate with your readers, they see you doing those things and it trusts them. It makes them trust you and to communicate what they're passionate about too. You know,
Absolutely. Just to start closing down, winding down a little bit, uh, this time we're talking about in the community. Maybe we should come back on another Besties and Books episode and talk about ways of promoting yourself outside of the community because a lot
right.
of people, we're talking right now about locally.
Yeah,
Now,
that first circle of like, you know, it almost kind of works like how a virus spreads,
exactly, exactly.
oh, sorry, I kicked my
And you're
table.
fine.
Um, you give it to your circle of friends, and hopefully they give it to their circle of friends and whatnot and what have you, and the more that you are able to connect with that first circle, I feel like helps.
And it grows.
And it grows and it helps beef you up, and people who might be like, 6 down the line from Kevin Bacon type of deal are gonna be like, "You know what? She talks to me or he talks to me just like if I were in that first circle." Like, that's the comfortability level. I think once you start locally,
It
you
grows out
gain that
to,
confidence so that you
yeah.
can make those circles bigger and bigger and bigger, and you do feel like, "You know what? Hey, if I can walk up to a cashier at the Dollar General and say, 'Hey, you wanna wear my T-shirt and hold my book, and I'll give it to you for free?'" You know? And you can tell me how much you love it the next time I'm in here. Um, that that confidence builds so that you're reaching out to places like Paris and s you know, um
Although, since you snuck that in there, we had to put off, we were going to Paris in 2024. We're putting it off to 2025. So, for all my listeners out there that are curious about that, we are still going, but we had to move it over to 2025. But that's
right?
okay. It's
That's
okay.
okay. That's
We're
okay.
still going to Paris. We're
I
still
mean,
getting out there.
there you go. Like, I would love to go to Britain if I could figure out a way to take the train there because I don't like to fly. Um, Cat's not a flyer. She don't like it at all. So,
We'll take care of that, ladies and
I
gentlemen. Don't
mean,
worry.
we're
We're going to
we're
get past that.
trying. We're trying. Okay, I've already signed up a few of my friends who are willing to travel with me as emotional support people. So,
You
um,
need to meet my friend Megan. Megan's story. She hates to fly too. I think the two of
oh
you together would be
yes,
great.
we would.
Megan is a musician, so you'd have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I I have so much fun talking with you about books and stuff and author stuff.
Absolutely.
I think it's cool to see behind the story too, like, and I think that this is going to be a really great avenue for us to do that in. Um we are going to be later on down the line, guys, for those of you authors who are paying attention and listening, and potential book club peeps. Um, we'd love to start having some special guests here on Besties and Books, so it's not
To
just
join
us
us,
two
yeah.
wonderful people talking. I know we're super interesting, guys. I know we are, but you know, like, I'm super excited to hear like from our communities, and so um,
You
we're
know,
gonna do
Kat,
that.
I'm going to throw a couple names out there, and if they're listening, I'll know because they'll get in contact with me.
All
Shaman
right,
Isis, I want you on this show.
nice.
Maria Humphreys, I want you on this show. Ruth
Mhm.
Snyder.
We want
Oh,
you
who,
on Besties and Books.
I know quite a few that I'd love to get on here, but those are a few. Graciela Moore. I
Um,
will get you, ladies. I will get you on here. Christy's talking now.
I also have a few names that I might throw out. One of my good friends just recently published his memoir. Derek Collins, I'm looking at you. You've asked me
Oh,
about book signings, so I hope I'm going to send a link to you about from this Besties and Books specifically because I know you're interested in how to promote that. Um, but my current author that I know,
Mm.
and we'll be soon having. I do want to have kind of discussions about also upcoming about helping others and doing the charity work through books and how we kind of do that as well. Like, um, because I have my own publishing imprint, so there's ways that I want to talk about branching out for helping people, just like we did tonight about talking about going in person places and how do you do that? And maybe um, we're gonna. This won't be the last time we talk about this topic. I think. I think.
No,
I
we got
think.
a long way to go with it, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah, 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 for sure. Because in-person stuff is always changing, right? And we
Absolutely.
had to really kind of flip the switch with when COVID happened, and that put a lot of stuff on hold, and a lot of like I know last year, even in 2022, with vaccinations and the things opening back up, lots of bookstores were not lots of places and events that we could participate in with books weren't happening. So I think we can also add that to the conversation when what happens when it doesn't happen, type of thing.
So
So I'm excited for that.
absolutely. Well, we're going to go ahead and close down because we're moving in on an hour. And unfortunately, I have things we got to get done tonight. Kat has things she has to get done
Yeah,
tonight. But we
absolutely.
will be back, ladies and
We'll
gentlemen,
be
with
back.
another episode of Besties and Books. But for now, good night, everyone. This has been Kristy Mickelsen. And
Kat Satava, and we're besties in books.
that's right. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.